bad and the snoring. One day, but 29 years ago, a 21-year-old man named Richard Isaacs was called to the office of his boss, Ricardo de la Moneypants. As soon as Richard sat down on one of the leather seats, Ricardo launched into his speech. Windows 1 has crashed, even though it's equipped with an incredible 2 kilobytes per computer, and it's your job to fix it. You have 5 days to get every PC up and running, update their LOS, limited operating system, and to clean every floor in our impressive 6-floor building. Either that, or you can go on a rainforest expedition for the same amount of time and bring back the rare pixel fly, which has the ability to unlock every single code in the world by flying into the computer. You can probably guess which one Richard chose. Well, the story would be really boring if he chose to fix the computers, so what do you expect? So 2 days later, Richard found himself touching down at Sao Paulo airport with his friend, Raymond. Richard was carrying maps, 3 torches, 6 packets of spare batteries, a laptop running on Windows 1, a small knife, a hunting rifle but no bullets, lots of rope, mosquito nets, tents, sleeping bags, a rucksack that was bigger than him, carrying clothes and embarrassing green hats, a sleeping mask, and a bottle of fizzy wine. Raymond carried a can of Coke. Well, I never said he was particularly helpful. On the way to the entrance to the forest, Richard went into a general store to buy some spring onions for their journey, and came out with a bunch of leeks. At the entrance to the forest, Raymond gave Richard some deeply thought out and wise advice. Try not to die. You're on your own. There's no way you're catching me in that horrible place. And then promptly ran off. Richard stared at him open-mouthed and then shrugged and walked off to a nice shady place to have a short nap. When Richard woke up, it was already growing dark, so he decided to leave the expedition till the next day and to read a chapter in his favourite book, How to Grow Hair. Well, you can probably guess what happened an hour later. Clue. The next day was bright and sunny. Unfortunately, it was a bright and sunny day back in England. In Brazil, it was raining. Richard woke up, looked around, and suddenly remembered where he was. He groaned, then set about putting on sun cream and his embarrassing green hat, which he thought made him look dead trendy. After Richard was done, he read a chapter in a different book called 101 Bad Jokes and Puns. Finishing the chapter, Richard started to walk purposefully towards the forest, all the while telling the local birds bad jokes until they fell off their branches in the trees. He carried on walking for a few more hours until he realised he had absolutely no idea where he was going, and he was completely lost. He reached for his Samsung Galaxy S3, but then remembered that it hadn't been invented yet, and that there was no such thing as a portable GPS anyway. He was just beginning to decide to trust his instincts when suddenly he heard a rustling in the trees, and out jumped a monkey wearing a Tottenham shirt. The monkey screeched at him and started throwing veggie sausages left, right and centre. Richard tried to defend himself, but it was of no use. The monkey had him beaten. The monkey knew it and screeched in delight. Suddenly, Richard remembered his red and white checkered shirt. He plunged his hand into his bag and waved the shirt frantically at the mad monkey. The monkey took one look at the shirt and dived off into the trees. Richard breathed a sigh of relief. A few hours later, he found an abandoned hut with a comfy-looking bed in it. He decided to take an afternoon's sleep because, well, why not? Richard woke up with 3 painted faces staring down at him. As they had not noticed he was awake, he decided to close his eyes and go back to sleep again, and he promptly started snoring. 2 minutes later, he heard someone shout, I can't stand that horrible noise anymore. I'm off. Richard was saved again. In what would have been the next day, Richard was walking along the path, happily adjusting his new wig, when he glimpsed a bright light through the foliage. Pushing away the bushes, who complained loudly, he saw a huge bowl of chicken soup standing on a pedestal and glowing. Richard instinctively started walking towards it, transfixed by its beauty and great smell, when suddenly an arrow whizzed over his head. Richard turned around and a spike popped up next to him. He started ducking and weaving around the traps until he found himself standing right in front of the bowl. He was just about to celebrate and drink the soup, which had a bowl of chopped liver next to it, when he looked around and saw his favourite green hat lying ripped and battered, impaled by a spike. Richard ran towards it, but it was already lifeless. He was pulled out of his sadness when he swore he heard the sound of his wife cheering all the way from England and decided he was going crazy. Slowly, he walked towards the chicken soup, and when he reached it, he tipped the whole thing into his mouth. Suddenly, he spat it out. This wasn't chicken soup, it was lentil soup. Then he heard the sound of bushes being trampled, and he knew he'd been tricked. When he turned around this time, he saw a giant veggie burger staring at him. Without thinking twice, Richard picked up the bowl of chopped liver and threw it as hard as he could at the evil beast. As soon as the burger saw the bowl, he tried to back away, but it hit him and poured its contents all over the helpless soy product. The burger roared as the meat started to dissolve him until there was nothing left but tiny little burger pieces. Richard stepped on it with his crock, picked up the chopped liver and ran. Stumbling through the trees, Richard wished for the 22nd time that he'd bought more embarrassing gear, as the crocodiles didn't run away screaming whenever they saw him anymore. He decided to take another short nap and think about the great mysteries of life, like, is chopped liver really made from cow liver? Unfortunately, try as he might, Richard just could not get to sleep. Suddenly, he remembered his bottle of fizzy wine. He pulled it out of his rucksack, took one small sip, and immediately fell asleep. He was woken by an annoying buzzing in his ear. He slapped it, but the thing that was making the buzzing just flew right above his face. Then he gasped. It was the pixel fly. No doubt about it. The creature had an unmistakable sign next to his head, the Windows logo. Clumsily, Richard tried to grab the fly, but it flew away out of reach. Richard tried again, but missed. Again and again he grabbed the fly, and again it flew out of reach. Eventually, Richard got up and started chasing the wretched thing. He was interrupted when he heard a huge roar. Richard instinctively hid behind a bush, and when he peeked out to see what was happening, he saw that the fly had landed on a huge gorilla. The gorilla roared again, snatched up the fly, and swallowed it. Richard gasped, and then gasped again when he had a horrible realization. His boss would kill him. He started sweating, wondering if he would have to work on a day when Arsenal were playing, when he woke up and sat up in bed. Phew, he thought. That was a horrible dream. Only then did he notice the banner above, which read, "Happy birthday, Daddy." It was the morning of his 50th birthday.